Hello my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance, where people follow exact orders to spite someone. And in today's episode, it's all about people getting back at smug parents, guys. And one OP tells a story about the time she obeys a nasty Karen and it led to disaster. Guys, I hope you enjoy the stories, don't shake your heads too hard, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. So this happened years and years ago, and listening to these stories got me thinking about this little bit of malicious compliance that 14-year-old me pulled off. So this was back around 2003. It was around Christmas time, and in my rather large family, we all draw names and then get that person a gift to the tune of $50 to $100, depending on the year. This particular Christmas, both of my parents had drawn the names of my cousins, who were my age and very close with me. I happened to have drawn the third of the three brothers, so we had the whole set, and my parents decided I was the logical choice for just choosing gifts for all of them, which I was more than happy to do. So off to Walmart we went. Now, another thing you need to know is that we're a paintball family, and airsoft was pretty new on the scene back then. It was just coming into its own, and it was kind of the hot thing on the block. So when I found a set of cheap airsoft guns that fit within my price constraints, I thought they were the perfect gifts. I stacked them in my cart and went and found where my parents were waiting. My dad looked them over and he was not impressed. My dad declares them puny and said they didn't look like any fun at all, but I stuck to my guns, stating it was something they would want and be excited about. He relented, and we start moving towards the cashier when this exchange took place. My dad tells me, "Those don't even look like they would hurt." To which I respond, "So, they don't have to hurt, Dad." He then says, "Yeah, but you would have to shoot someone from less than 5 feet away to even feel it." I then ask, "So, you want me to shoot you with one?" Dad says, "Sure." We laughed, checked out, and then hauled our stuff home. 3 days later, I acquired a few extra bits and bobs to go with the guns. Stuff like eye protection, a couple of extra clips, and BBs. I was wrapping them up in my bedroom, so there I am, with the box open on my bed, and I can hear my dad in the middle of a phone call, as he's a doctor. He's sitting at the family PC, which happened to be situated right in front of the door to my bedroom. Recalling his words from the store, I popped the rifle out of its foam packaging, stuck in a BB, cracked open my door, and shot my dad in the leg from about 3 feet away. And here's some additional context. My father is not the kind of person you do this to. He's a nice man, but at times his anger will get the best of him. And although he never hit us kids, he can really get going. He'll break stuff, swear, get a beet red face, all that stuff. So in the middle of this phone call with one of his nurses, he screams out loud at the top of his lungs, and he comes up out of that office chair like he had been shot, as he had been. He then turns around and looks at me, his face as red as a tomato, the cordless phone clutched in his fist, and then he says to me, "What the F are you doing?" Through my cracked door, I replied back, "Well, Dad, you said I could shoot you because it wouldn't hurt." Right after I said that, he deflated. My dad rolls his eyes, and with a sigh he said, "You know what, I do remember that. I remember what I said, and yeah, okay, that hurt. Don't do that again." Sitting here recounting the story, I honestly can't believe that 14-year-old me had the nerve to go through with that, and I suffered 0 consequences for it. What a great malicious compliance, guys, and kudos to Dad for being such a good sport about it after he learned why he was shot by his son. But yeah, I had this friend back in high school, guys, who pretty much was like the dad, who was convinced that BB gun shots don't hurt, despite never even seeing one in person. The guy literally got someone to shoot him from like 3 feet away in the leg, and it turns out getting shot 3 feet away does hurt, and the guy had to go to the doctors to get the BB removed from his leg. So I just remembered this old story of mine earlier today, and I thought it would be fun to share. A long time ago, in the faraway year of 1999, I was a young 11-year-old boy, finishing my last year of elementary school. Right before my birthday, my parents called the family together for a meeting. They told us that my mom had gotten a new job and we would need to move. We weren't moving too far away, only about an hour, but that still meant moving away from my friends and going to a completely different middle school than the one I thought I'd be going to. So elementary school wrapped up, and we moved to our new house in early July. In August, my parents and I got to take a tour of the school and meet the principal and some of the teachers. That's when we learned there weren't any buses that passed our new neighborhood. It was actually close to the school, so that meant I would be walking to and from there every day. My parents weren't too thrilled about this, but it was only a 15 to 20 minute walk, and there was a path, so they quickly came around on the idea. At the time, both of my parents worked full-time, 5 days a week. My mom worked Monday through Friday, and my dad worked Monday through Thursday and Saturday. And trust me, this is relevant. Since my older sister was away in college full-time, and they didn't trust me and my brother alone, my parents found a babysitter to watch us until my parents got home. My brother was 2 years younger than me in the local elementary school. The school year started in early September, and we got a massive heat wave that reached highs of like 96 degrees for a couple of days. The middle school was also an old building, and most of it was not air-conditioned. I only had 2 classes that had AC in the classroom throughout the day. At the end of those days, I was tired, and I wasn't in the mood to walk an additional 20 minutes in the heat before getting home. So I used my vending machine snack money to call the babysitter from a payphone. The babysitter came and picked me up, and I would do some homework before watching TV. I did try to call home 2 more times over the next 2 weeks when it was hot. The second time, I got the sitter again. And the third time I called, it was on a Friday, and my dad answered. My dad was not happy with me. He told me it wasn't that hot. It was 85 that day, and that I shouldn't call the sitter away from the house, and that I had to start growing up. He then told me to walk home, and we would talk more when I got there. So I walked home, and I got a lecture, and I was told to not call the sitter again to be picked up. I said okay, and I told him I wouldn't call the sitter or him again to be picked up. Well, 2 weeks later, at the end of September, a hurricane passed through the area. Halfway through the day at school, it really started coming down. It got so bad that they let us out of school half an hour early, like that was gonna save us. And by this time, a lot of roads were flooding and the line for payphones was long. I remember what my dad told me a couple of weeks ago, so being spiteful little me, I walked home. It took me almost 30 minutes to walk home from school that day, and I was drenched by the time I got home. The rain was coming down so hard that I couldn't see more than 5 feet in front of me. The roads were so flooded that the only way to drive in was with a car that had 4-wheel drive. When I got home, both of my parents were there panicking because they hadn't heard from me or the school. I just walked in through our garage, soaking wet, and I said, "Hi Mom, hi Dad, I'm home." After they got over the initial shock and relief of seeing me home, my parents and I had this conversation. My mom asked, "How did you get home?" I told her I walked. My mom freaks out and says, "Why? Why would you walk?" And this is when I responded, "Dad told me to." Mom says, "When? We didn't get any calls from you or the school today." I tell her, well, a couple of weeks ago, I called the sitter a few times and asked for a ride home since it was really hot. The last time I called, I got Dad. Dad told me I had to walk home from now on and not call for a ride ever again. This is when Dad interrupts and says, I implied there could be exceptions. I tell him, you didn't say that. And hearing that, my mom turns on my dad. He told me to dry myself off and put my clothes in the dryer. As I was drying myself off, I could hear Mom yelling at him. It was louder than the rain. When I was done and put my clothes in the dryer, my parents talked to me, and they told me I was allowed to call home, but only for emergencies. The next day, which was Saturday, my dad took me out to Blockbuster, and I was told that I could rent up to 5 movies for myself. He also paid for pizza that night, and I got a whole pepperoni pizza for myself. That pizza lasted 2 days, and no one was allowed to touch it. My dad never lived that down. Good times. Oh boy, I can only imagine how worried sick OP's parents were. But that was such a good malicious compliance, guys. Like, never underestimate the stubbornness of a teenager and their ability to feel invincible, especially when it comes to wanting to spite their parents. That said though, gotta love it when you get rewarded because of your parents' mistake and them feeling guilty about it. That pizza had to have been the best pizza ever. So I'm a nanny for a small agency, and I love my job so much, except when I don't. Yesterday, I took care of a 4-year-old girl, a 2-year-old boy, and a 5-month-old boy. I was there yesterday, and I know kids at this age have enough energy to make the world stop spinning, and they tend to not listen. But damn, these kids were terrible. No control of themselves at all. There was paint on my dress, and I was hit by glass cups, and plates were thrown at me. Glasses were covered in jelly. The kids were coughing in my face, and I had some spit on me. Needless to say, my first thought was a shower and a hot meal. I lost my cool, and I had to issue timeouts and separate the kids when they fought. I cleaned messes, shield the infant, take toys and TV from the kids and not allow them to choose movies. I record this so the parents know what happened. I always try to keep a positive outlook every day. I'm always smiling and being super nice to everyone and asking how they are. I told the mom what happened when she came home, and the mom lost it on me. She told me, "Do not parent my kids. You are not their mom." Now, I was taken aback and I wanted to be petty, so I said, "All right." So the next time I come and mom left to go to work, I do just that. I'm currently letting the kids go crazy in the house. There was a mess everywhere and I'm not even being bothered. If you hit me with a glass, I hope it breaks so mom can pay my medical bills. The 5-month-old is really the one I'm caring for at this point, and I'm just making sure he's safe. He's being cute as F right now. I've yet to be done with my shift as I type this. The house looks horrible. There's a red spot on me from a kid hitting me, and I'm covered in coughs and paint and markers. There's drawings all over the walls and on their white couches. I'm not parenting them. I hope the mom enjoys the mess when she comes home. Update. So mom came home and she was appalled at the destroyed house. My hair is covered in peanut butter, and my leather shoes will need to be cleaned and polished. On top of the scribbles and the coloring on the walls, there's literal crap on the walls. And so much more that happened. I put the baby to sleep and I walked out, and the mom screamed she's gonna get me fired. I just said nothing. She also followed me to my car, saying I'm responsible for the damage to her home. I'm not too worried, to be honest. She's being blacklisted by me. Never again am I going back. I need to take a nap and a shower, and I need some mac and cheese. Update number 2. So I was on the phone with the agency and the mom. The family's contract is being voided, and I'm being paid more than the extra money they were giving me. Plus, the mom will pay for my medical bill, to patch up my hand that was cut, to clean my clothes, and to replace my broken glasses. Thank goodness that Karen's being held accountable for her and her kids' behavior, guys. And the best part of all of this is OP walking out of there covered in marker and peanut butter like a frickin' boss after giving Karen exactly what she asked for. And honestly, I bet a lot of nannies and babysitters have only dreamed of doing something like this. And another thing, with all the stories I've read, what I've learned, especially when it comes to malicious compliance tales, is nothing good ever happens when a Karen says to someone, "Don't you parent my kids." Like, why is it always the worst parents that say that to other people? So I was just reminiscing after I made the poor nurse shudder from cracking my knuckles at the doctor's appointment. It reminded me of a funny story with my mom. My mom absolutely hated when I cracked my knuckles around her. I can't help myself. It's a bad habit, and once I start, I have to do all of them. She would constantly yell at me to stop. She would tell me it's bad for me and that I'm going to get arthritis from doing that. So one day at home, I start making my fingers into Rice Krispie treats. Snap, crackle, pop. My mom had enough at this point, and she snapped herself. She says to me, "I want you to write a 2-page essay about cracking your fingers, including about arthritis. No more than double space, 12-point font, and all of that. I don't want you trying anything funny." Well, of course I'm going to try something funny. We wouldn't be here if I didn't, so cue the malicious compliance. I sat at the computer and I pulled open Google and I typed in how cracking your fingers does not cause arthritis. Turns out I was correct. I had plenty of sources, including this one guy who cracked his knuckles regularly on one hand and not at all on the other. The other hand got arthritis and the cracking hand did not. I included that and a few other truthful things, like it does cause loss of grip, but ultimately, it was about how it helped prevent arthritis in the long term. My mom took the essay without a word. She skimmed it and called it good, to my surprise. I couldn't believe I got away with it. But I also remember that it got brought up in a conversation in my adult years, before cancer claimed her. One day, I cracked my knuckles again, and my mom screams and says, "What did I tell you about cracking your knuckles? I had you write an essay on that and everything." I responded, "Mom, you didn't read that, did you?" She then says, "What makes you think that?" And me, smiling like a fox in a henhouse, said, "Because I wrote it on how it prevents arthritis." My mom, with a surprised face, said, "No, you didn't." And I told her, "Yes, I did. I cited sources and everything." My mom screams and says, "You brat." To which I tell her, "The apple doesn't fall far from the tree." I loved my mom. What a wholesome story that was, and you know what? I'm glad we got to take this trip down memory lane with OP. And guys, growing up, I'm pretty sure a lot of us heard that cracking knuckles only creates problems down the road. I remember my grade 2 teacher literally scaring all of us kids into not cracking our knuckles by saying that her husband had to have 3 of his fingers amputated from doing it so often. And the funny thing is, we remember the guy showing up on Valentine's Day one day with flowers for her. And we're all like, "Show us your missing fingers." And the guy had no idea what we were talking about. She later told us she was joking and that she just hated the sound, but for a while it did work. 18 years ago, and not about. Trust me, I know this one to the date. I was over at Dad's house and I needed a wrench. And coming from a long line of mechanics, I knew he had one available as I didn't have a kit in my car. So I asked to borrow one. Dad of course says yes, and he hands me the mechanic's toolbox. And just out of habit, I opened it and I immediately noticed that a Craftsman 7/16 ratchet end wrench was missing. Again, I come from a long line of mechanics. Every tool has its place, be it in a drawer, a box, or outlined on a pegboard. And I thought it was weird that Dad lost a wrench out of the house toolkit. So I tell Dad, "Hey Dad, you're missing a 7/16 wrench." Showing him the missing slot. Now Dad, being Dad, just had to bust on me a bit. So looking me dead in the eyes and with a huge beaming smile, he responded, "It was there when I gave it to you." Now mind you, I hadn't left the kitchen. I hadn't so much as shifted my feet. I knew Dad was lying. He knew he was lying. But it had been ingrained in me since childhood that losing a tool is a death sentence. Now I knew he was busting my chops and I let it go. But from that day forward, anytime we needed something, he would make a comment like, "Sure wish I had that 7/16 wrench that you lost," or "You know what would fix it? That missing 7/16 wrench." And this went on for months. So one day, he made the usual tease me for losing a tool comment, and I warned him. I looked him dead in the eyes and I say it one more time, old man, and you are going to get that wrench every birthday, Father's Day, and Christmas for the rest of your natural life. Dad, of course, just laughed. A few hours passed and we were working in the garage and I asked him to hand me a tool. And that's when he said, "I can't, you lost it, remember?" Hearing that, I laughed. I just played it off, but it was on. And that was 18 years ago. Today, being his birthday, he just received his 52nd 7/16 wrench. Since that day, he's tried telling me that he knows I didn't lose it, that I don't need to buy him a new one, and he's occasionally tried to say it was a different size or item to get a different present. But we both know that's not happening. And the thing is, they're everywhere. Every coffee can, junk drawer, cabinet, toolbox, pegboard, or spare nail in the house and garage contains a Craftsman's 7/16 ratchet end wrench. And you know how they say you're never more than 8 feet from a spider? Well, in Dad's world, you're never more than 7 feet from a 7/16 ratchet end wrench, because there's at least 2 in his truck at this point as well. And when will it end, you ask? When the old bastard dies. The last wrench will go in his cold, dead hand so he can tighten bolts in hell because I warned him. I really warned him. So this one's to all of you with weird traditions, jokes, and relationships with the man who made you who you are today. I love my dad dearly, and honestly, if you need a wrench, hit me up. I know a guy who has a lot of them. Guys, I love everything about this, and the best part of all is OP's sense of humor and relationship with his father, because you know that every single one of those wrenches was an I love you dad. And OP does pop into the comments saying that the wrench is not the only thing he gets his dad. It's always paired with a real gift. But what a tradition that is, and I can only wonder what dad will leave OP in his will one day. He'll get every single one of those wrenches back. Freaking wholesome post. So in our community garden, we get teams of kids from the local school to come help, and it's often the case that they turn up on Saturday morning as well. They're almost entirely well behaved, which is great, as there's not a lot we can do about bad behavior beyond a stern voice. Although, one time a kid kicked one of our rabbits, so a girl brained him with a shovel. It was rough, but effective justice. That said, there was one boy who came for the first time last week. I don't know him, but we made him very welcome. The kid only lasted half an hour before storming off in tears after his third telling off. The kid was spinning around and around, holding a shovel, and then letting it fly off at head height. Well, this morning, his mom, I assume, came with him. I saw him point out my friend and me, but he didn't ask to join, so after shouting hello, we let them be. About 10 minutes in, he starts wandering, and my friend shouts at him saying, "Hey, don't go round behind that greenhouse, it's not safe around there." Well, his mom had obviously been waiting for this because she went from 0 to 100 in 2 seconds flat, demanding to know, do we own this garden, and if not, what business is it of ours where her son goes? We just explained that we want him to be safe, and she replies that she's quite capable of taking care of that herself, thank you. So I thought to myself, fine, on you go. So off the kid went, exploring behind the greenhouse, which is not safe because it's a compost heap, which is very unstable, and it's the muck mound, which is a giant pile of horse manure that we get delivered every autumn. By the spring, the inside is all nice and rotted down, and the outside is hard and crusty, and a lot less strong than you think. So after a minute, there was a crunch and a squeal, and I think we did very well to drag him out without saying "I told you so" or breaking into hysterical laughter. He was absolutely black from chest height downwards. And although well-rotted manure doesn't smell really bad, it's very thick and sticky and slimy. His mom grabbed him without a word, and they head for the gate, and the kid starts bawling as soon as the surprise wore off. My friend said, "Would you like some bags to spread out in your car?" And to her credit, she did say thanks when he handed them over. I wonder if we'll see them again next week. Oh, that poor kid, but can't say he didn't deserve it, right? Another instance of don't parent my kids, I'll do it, going horribly wrong. Absolutely disgusting though, and I hope the mom learned a lesson after that. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /MaliciousCompliance. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's in our /entitled People episode, where a freeloading Karen invades OP's home and she won't leave. Guys, go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.